to the 8th International Humanitarian Law Dialogues. And of course, the focus of this year's dialogues is a new world disorder, international humanitarian law in an uncertain world. And so on behalf of the Robert H. Jackson Center and the Chautauqua Institution, I would like very much to welcome you all to the commencement of this year's dialogues. Of course, I am Jim Johnson. I'm the president of the Robert H. Jackson Center. I think there may be 2 or 3 that I have not met before. I would like to start off by introducing our prosecutors. I truly believe, I don't think we've ever had this many prosecutors at the dialogues. We have 10 prosecutors with us this year, current prosecutors and a number of former prosecutors. And we are absolutely thrilled to have them with us this year. And I'm just going to start introducing them as they're seated here in the front row. I'd like to first introduce Serge Bramitz from the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Fatou Bensouda from the International Criminal Court. Hassan Jallow from the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Brenda Hollis from the Special Court for Sierra Leone. Ambassador Stephen Rapp from the Special Court for Sierra Leone. Andrew Cayley from the Cambodian Tribunal. Sir Desmond de Silva from the Special Court for Sierra Leone. James Stewart, Deputy Prosecutor with the International Criminal Court. Our newest prosecutor, Nicholas Kimjian from Cambodia. And of course, David Crane from the Special Court for Sierra Leone. It is a thrill to have you all here with us this year. One of the reasons that the dialogues can happen is because of the tremendous relationship and partnership that we have with Chautauqua Institution. And you just, for those that came for the first time to the dialogues and arrived yesterday, particularly those that arrived after dark, I talked to several of you, and you were just so sorry that you came after dark because you didn't get to soak up the atmosphere when you come onto the grounds. But again, as I said, it is tremendous that we have this wonderful relationship. And with that, I would like to introduce Tom Becker, the president of Chautauqua Institution.
Good morning. This is the first time in about 10 weeks when I haven't had to wear the tie at one of these events. I am deeply grateful. Welcome to all of you. Prosecutors, welcome. David, congratulations. Good luck with the role as chair. It's a pleasure to work with Jim and my good friend, old friend, Craig Peterson. Well, welcome to Chautauqua Institution. For those of you who have grown up in this place or been here forever, indulge me for a second. For those of you who did come in the middle of the night and wonder what the heck this is, let me point out that as an institution founded in the ether of the Civil War, the gathering here is born out of the progressive movement in the United States. Not the political one, but the philosophical one. A lot had of sort of a moral urgency behind it, Methodist Church and others. Some people talk about Chautauqua as utopian, but it is not. It is not in the sense that it never claimed that it was an alternative to the rest of life, but rather a resource. It's supposed to make a difference in how we not only perceive the world, understand it, but see ourselves in relation to very difficult issues, and most importantly, see what action each of us as individuals should be taking, and therein lies the progressive quality of the work. It's the origins of continuing education in the United States. Had a huge global influence early on in its lifetime. When we went to the Soviet Union in 1986 with the Chautauqua Conference, it was the 100th anniversary of the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle, a book club, the 100th anniversary in Russia. An interesting thing to think about, is it not? So here we are today. When we were founded, a lot of what the founders were pursuing was access to information, which was limited and difficult and necessary in order to build a model of lifelong education that married both faith and science and learning and advancement and political involvement. When we come to the work today, access to information is just not our problem. We've got more information than we know what to do with, and therein lies the charge. We try to build a community here that has access to meaning, and what that is information placed into a context and invite people to come and take their life experience and apply it to that information put into context so that they can find how they fit in it and what it means to them individually, and then go back and alter their lives and the lives of those around them in whatever setting. It's an important place. It was an explosively important place at the end of the 19th century. It's a gigantically important place, I think, right now, because there are precious few models that really do invite a consideration of important issues in terms of their complexity and their nuance, and that practice a kind of rigorous discourse that is at once candid and civil, and that acknowledge that the path to truth can be found in lots of different ways. Thus our investment in art and interreligious dialogue, as well as public affairs. And then finally, the beauty that you see around here is also intentional. The idea here is that you come out of the rest of your world where when you come through those gates, you can drop some of those hard-won, hard-earned, very necessary certitudes that keep you in a safe position, and in a win-lose context of things are often very important to you. And here, we ask you to drop those and use the comfort as a way of taking chances. Investigate new information, try new art forms, create new relationships that are born around the differences. Genuine conversation is not between people who utterly agree. It's between people who don't agree and bring different points of view. And I would say that one of the problems we have in this country, and perhaps beyond, is that there is no institutional investment any longer in building those kinds of skills and experiences. And yet here we are. And I'm happy to say we're flourishing, and I'm very proud that this institution is the place where you good people gather. What you do is create order out of chaos. We talked last night in the 3 taps that closed the closing ceremony of the institution about Stanley Kunitz's line about how important it is to live in the layers and not in the litter of life. And I thank all of you who are the focus of this week's discussion for sorting through all the litter and finding the layers. So welcome to Chautauqua, and I hope you have a very successful gathering.
You know, I think Tom, in talking about Chautauqua Institution and in a place that you can come to and set aside your cares of the day and engage in discussion and conversation, is exactly what the dialogues are about, in the sense that we have some wonderful plenary sessions here throughout the course of the next 2 days, but it's often the relationships that you develop, the conversations that you have on the breaks and at the porch sessions in the evening after the day is done, when you can relax with a beer and a glass of wine and discuss the events, discuss what's happened that day, and just to have some good discussion. And so that's what the dialogues is all about, and we certainly look forward this year to continuing that tradition. I did not welcome all of those who may be watching via the web. For the third year in a row, many of today's programs are being streamed over the web. And so we do hope that we have an online audience out there, just as we do here with us today. Before I turn it over to our first award winner, and to Drew Biter, the Director of Education Initiatives at the Robert H. Jackson Center, I would like to thank our sponsors. We'll be thanking them throughout the next few days, but I'd like to bring their attention to you now. Of course, without our sponsors, the dialogues quite simply couldn't happen. They're what make this possible. And so I would like just to mention our sponsors now, and you will be meeting with them over the course of the next few days, and many of them will be up here before you, but I'll just run down the list of sponsors now. The American Bar Association, the American Red Cross, the American Society of International Law. I guess all those are the A's right there. Case Western Reserve University School of Law, the Chautauqua Institution, the Athenaeum Hotel, Impunity Watch, International Bar Association, International Law Girls, New York University Center for Global Affairs, the Planethood Foundation, of course the Robert H. Jackson Center, Syracuse University College of Law, the Whitney R. Harris World Law Institute at Washington University School of Law, and of course in association with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. So please give our sponsors a round of applause. I'll next invite forward Andrew Biter, the Robert H. Jackson Director of Education Initiatives, and move forward.
Thank you, Jim, and good morning, everyone. To the prosecutors, great to see you once again. And I have the good fortune of introducing our essay contest for this year. But in the next just brief moments, I'd like to give you some indication that educationally, help is on the way for your important work. And working with my colleague Joe Karb, Education Director here at the Center, as well as the staff of the Summer Institute, I'd just like to briefly outline some programs that allow students around the world to stand on your broad shoulders and repair the world. The question is, how can we get our students, whether they live in Chautauqua or in The Hague, to look at the world as Jackson did? One that is open to the healing hands of international justice and human rights. So to do that, at the Center this fall, we'll be unveiling a larger initiative called Jackson in the Classroom that will have teacher-ready lessons and materials that will allow our students to literally step into your shoes. To give you an example of that, in the lesson that's called Nuremberg to The Hague, the students look at Jackson's opening statement, both in video and in print, analyze the details of that, and then using resources over the internet, pivot and write their own opening statement on a human rights hotspot of today, whether that be Congo or Syria. The goal is to get our students to think in terms of international justice and to what the complex world that is. Likewise, working in conjunction with the Summer Institute at Buffalo, I'm happy to announce that the I Am Syria program that David conceived 2 years ago is alive and well and flourishing. And educationally, the internet has been a game changer. My day job is that I teach 125 students outside of Buffalo, New York, 8th grade American history. But throughout the past 2 years, we've been able to engage over 10,000 teachers here around the world with our I Am Syria lessons. Now, to give you an idea of how profound that is, each teacher roughly teaches between 100 and 150 students. So quickly, you're not just teaching 25 kids, you're teaching the size of the Rose Bowl. So not only I Am Syria, but our Jackson-related initiatives have that power to them. This fall, we're releasing a module on how to teach the refugee crisis and to go right into that and to also not just admire the problem, but to provide some concrete alternatives for students to get involved with and assist in some way. Now, the Summer Institute, to which I'm director and the Jackson Center is a co-sponsor, is an organization in Buffalo, New York that is a camp for the good people of the world. That it allows world leaders such as David and Jim and others to come in and interact with our students to give them that complicated instruction that they're not getting at school. The picture here is this beautiful shot of a Harriet Tubman reenactor on the Niagara River in Buffalo, where slaves were ferried across in secret to Canada in the Underground Railroad times. The connection is a powerful one. How can we teach our students to be abolitionists? So with that in mind, our theme this year was Not on Our Watch, Standing Up to Genocide. And you see this beautiful picture of one of our students that I thought the people in the front row would like. And it's the power of what you do here and being role models for our students and ourselves in the audience. Our essay contest this year, I believe, is the 6th year working with Impunity Watch. I'd like to thank you for your time. We look forward to having our students from the Summer Institute mingle with you later. But right now, I'd like to introduce Abbie Reese, the editor of Impunity Watch. Abbie, come on up.
Good morning. As Drew said, my name is Abbie Reese. I'm a third-year law student at Syracuse University College of Law and the editor-in-chief of the Impunity Watch Law Journal. For those of you who do not know, Impunity Watch is both a law journal and a news outlet with an interactive website serving as our main source of publication. The goal of our web-based presence is to immediately alert the world of impunity issues as they arise. Impunity Watch was created in 2007 through the efforts of a dedicated group of students and Professor David Crane, the founding chief prosecutor of the Special Court for Sierra Leone. The journal is now in its 8th year. Throughout this time, we have worked to provide unbiased, objective reporting on impunity issues throughout the world, and we continue to do so. We also aim to expose and examine human rights and impunity issues from a grassroots and academic perspective. To help further our mission, we collaborate with other institutions. One of those collaborations is with Andrew Bider and the Summer Institute for Human Rights and Genocide Studies in Buffalo. Each year, Impunity Watch hosts an essay contest with the Summer Institute, and the winner has his or her essay published in Impunity Watch's annual review. This year, as Drew said, the theme of the contest was Not on Our Watch, Standing Up to Genocide. The winner's essay exemplified this theme and highlighted how the use of modern-day communication, including the tools of the press, social media, and photography, can spread the word about genocide and help with standing up to these atrocities. Please help me in congratulating Hala El Sol as this year's Impunity Watch Essay Contest winner.
At this time, I would like to invite to the podium the Board of Directors, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Robert H. Jackson Center, and the other few small things that he's done, like being the prosecutor at Sierra Leone and professor at Syracuse Law School, but I'd like to invite up David Crane.
For the tech director in back, the screen here isn't, I'd like to have the YouTube screen out. But David, why don't you start, and hopefully this will be up in a second. Okay. My apologies.
Well, again, good morning, and it's always a pleasure, particularly to see my colleagues. It's always humbling to see these tremendous men and women who I have known and admired for decades. Also, colleagues and friends from the practitioner world, people who I haven't seen in a while, also our dear friends from the Academy, as well as our Chautauquan friends who come every year to the International Humanitarian Law Dialogues. It's amazing. I always think that the sun always shines here, that the breezes are always warm, because that's exactly what they are every time we come back to Chautauqua for the International Humanitarian Law Dialogues. I've heard that it does rain here from time to time. We've not seen it, but in reality, there's nothing wrong with being lucky in life, to be sure. But again, welcome. It's a pleasure on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Robert Jackson Center, which I'm proud to chair. We do welcome you. We have a tremendous program, and as we move along through the day, I would hope that you would start removing ties and taking jackets off and beginning to completely relax. I know it's a bit formal this morning, but certainly we encourage the primary word, and that is to relax and to talk and discuss among colleagues and friends. Well, a month ago, many of us lost a dear friend and colleague, someone who we have worked with for decades, someone who we admired, someone who we had meals with, someone we drank beer with and wine, someone who was a counselor, but always a bright and shining, steady light throughout his distinguished career. We lost the Honorable Judge Hans-Peter Kaul last month, and so what I'd like to do is, if it is ready to be shown, a brief vignette which captures the essence of our dear friend, and then I'm going to ask you to stand for a moment of silence. If we can please play that.
David, my sincere apologies. We had this all cued and perfect and up on the screen. So, Jim, if you could work your magic here, perhaps.
I don't know why it won't come up. There's something in your computer.
So I think,
Well, look, again, it doesn't diminish the importance of our dear friend. And so, if you would please stand. For a moment of silence for our dear friend, the Honorable Judge Hans-Peter Kaul of the International Criminal Court. Thank you very much. We're going to try it again.
yeah, I'm so sorry. So
Okay, well, look, what I'd like to do is go ahead and continue to move forward in our program, and if we get an opportunity to work through these technical problems, we certainly will, and we will show you this really kind of extraordinary vignette of our friend talking about his first meeting with Whitney Harris and his association with our good friend Whitney Harris, who was the first recipient of the Joshua Hines Humanitarian Award. So we'll work through this, and hopefully we'll be able to show it to you sometime today. Well, it is my distinct pleasure to also, as chairman of the board each year, to introduce our keynote speaker, who is a good friend and colleague and someone who I've come to admire over the years in her hard work at many, many levels and her distinguished career. Ambassador Tina Intelman from Estonia is a distinguished diplomat. She was the permanent representative of Estonia to the United Nations in New York from 2005 to 2011 and has been president of the Assembly of State Parties of the International Criminal Court since December 2011. She was educated at Leningrad State University, and in 1991 she became a diplomat with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Estonia. In 1999 to 2002, Ambassador Intelman was Estonia's permanent representative to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. From 2002 to 2005, Ambassador Intelman was the Foreign Ministry's Undersecretary for Political Affairs and Relations with the Press. She became the permanent representative to the United Nations on 30 March 2005, and in 2011 her term at the UN ended and she became Estonia's ambassador to Israel and Estonia's non-resident ambassador to Montenegro. On the 12th of December of 2011, Ambassador Intelman was elected to succeed our good friend Christian Vaneveser as the president of the Assembly of State Parties of the International Criminal Court. She is the first woman to head the ICC's Assembly of State Parties. It is with humble pride that I introduce to you our good friend and colleague, Ambassador Tina Intelman.
Good morning to everybody, and thank you very much, David, for this very kind introduction and also for the invitation to speak here. This morning I woke up and the gravity of the situation all of a sudden hit me, that I have promised to analyze the world disorder. And unfortunately, I had my emails, so I opened the emails and I saw that Mr. Lavrov, Foreign Minister of Russia, had given a press conference announcing another humanitarian convoy that was going to Ukraine. And he also said that everything in the world will be back to business as usual fairly soon. So that was good news. So when David Crane called me several months ago to ask me if I wanted to talk in Chautauqua, we of course had no way of predicting what was going to happen over summer. And however, we did know that the security situation in the world had changed dramatically. And we also knew that those of us who still had Fukuyama's end of history on the bedside table had to get rid of it and find something else. And of course, as we sit here today, and I'm trying to analyze the world disorder, none of us has a crystal ball to tell what the future brings. But it's quite clear that we are witnessing a very surprising and very worrying state of the world today. And it was not supposed to be like that. The 21st century was supposed to be much better than the previous one. Just very recently, I learned that there is a saying that an optimist is a person who has not read the news. And this seems to be very appropriate in present circumstances. And then there are all these other sayings that things are so bad that they can only get better, which doesn't seem to be applying right now. And that obviously things can be much worse. And this is, I think, what we are facing right now. And it seems that many places in the world are falling apart, and some of us are worried about the situation in the Middle East. Some of us are looking at Iraq specifically, at Syria. Me, speaking as an Estonian and Estonian diplomat, I cannot help being worried about what is happening in Ukraine and about the actions that Russia is undertaking. And in Estonia, we are sometimes wondering if history has the tendency to repeat itself. And here I have to remember our former president. When we restored independence, he kept saying, we don't have much time. You have to be aware, we have to hurry. There is no time. And now he's dead. And we really realized there was not much time. So David also asked me to analyze in this world disorder when the ICC stands and what will be the future of the ICC. And we all know that this ICC was supposed to be part of this better world that we were constructing, where there was no impunity, and that you all put it in place under circumstances when we were a little bit more optimistic than we are right now. But isn't this a blessing that you have had almost these 20 years to establish the ICC in circumstances that were a little bit more or even much more unanimous and much more supportive towards international criminal justice than we see the situation right now? And one thing, sometimes on small things are very striking. Just recently somebody told me, but look, everybody now knows that the ICC is the court in The Hague. And it wasn't like that 2 or 3 years ago. It wasn't. Now apparently everybody knows that the ICC is the court in The Hague. And this is thanks to you. You have been working towards that. So the state of affairs at the court, and I should be very humble speaking in the presence of a prosecutor and deputy prosecutor, but the mantra usually is that there are 21 cases arising from 8 situations, and most of these situations stem from the fact that the country concerned has approached the court and asked the court to become involved. But this doesn't tell the whole story. It's also useful to look over the years. And in this respect, this year has been extremely, extremely amazing. There are so many requests for the ICC to get involved, either by states, by organizations, or through the United Nations system. That is absolutely unprecedented. There has been an attempt to refer Syria to the ICC, failed attempt. The Human Rights Council Commission of Inquiry has looked into the situation in Democratic Republic of the Korea, again suggesting that that would be a case for the ICC. We also know that Ukraine has made self-referral. We also know that the Foreign Minister of Palestine has recently visited the court, asking what were the options for Palestine to create a relationship with the ICC. And so many other developments have happened, which really means that the news have gotten out and the court is doing a good work and it has the confidence of states. We also have to say that the ICC has started to work as a real court. This was one of the things that President Song told me when I first met him. I'm quite sure that you are a fine diplomat, but you have to understand that you will be working in a system where you have to deal with a real court. It is a court. It's not an international institution or a political playing field. So the court has started to work like that. And of course, from my position, I have been mostly dealing with the political support to the activities of the court. How do you measure political support to the court? Through the budget, for instance, very easy. Through the budget, this political support is there, although, of course, every year we have to go through certain fights, but every year the court gets more money. The diplomatic and political support is also through the United Nations Security Council. If we look at how many peacekeeping mandates now have the component of working together with the ICC. But still there is a question, how do you measure political support? And what happens if things get tough? And one way of measuring this support is if the support is maintained when you have to suffer from it. Last year, around this time, and even earlier, some of our African states bodies started approaching us saying that they were not able to maintain their cooperation and good attitude to the court because that may bring about significant economic problems or even political problems. And these news were not received well by other states parties. But those African countries said that really they were afraid about the economic well-being of their country if things became complicated and if they still had to maintain the support to the court. 1 year, let's fast forward 1 year. We are right now in the circumstances where we are. And we know that one European country has annexed part of another European country. The US has sanctions against that country, and the European Union also has decided on sanctions. And we are looking at what is happening in the world. And in Europe, some of the biggest supporters of international law, international criminal law, all of a sudden are now speaking about remaining neutral. And some are speaking about economic implications of these sanctions, which are not entirely welcome. So I think we have to take that aspect into consideration. When the real situation comes closer to you, you start thinking about your national interest. Right now, a state party has commissioned a report to look into what to do if states are not cooperating with the court. And this famous issue of non-cooperation actually involves only one issue, the failure to arrest a sitting president of a country. And in that report, I was surprised to see that there is sanctions are proposed. And I guess it's very easy to propose sanctions against small countries in Africa because it really doesn't affect us. But now coming to this issue of prosecuting sitting heads of state and the basic principle that nobody is above the law, which you know was a major achievement in Rome. We are not very good at this. No, not yet. The problems that we faced with the issue of Kenya last year, and also the problems that we faced with the failure to arrest Mr. al-Bashir, these are all linked to the issue whether no one is above the law and what do we do if investigations are concerning heads of state. Last year, when the Assembly of States Parties all of a sudden turned itself into a political body, because it's supposed to be just an administrative body adopting the budget. We just found no other way of sorting out the political turmoil that had arisen around the court. So we thought, okay, let the Assembly be a political body. So I even had to hear people trying to convince me that if the Assembly decided on a different regime concerning heads of state, then maybe even President al-Bashir would agree to appear before the court represented by counsel. This hasn't happened yet. but we are still hopeful. So, concerning this Assembly of States parties and what we saw last year, again, I hope that we will not have the opportunity of turning into a political body anymore in the near future. We also have to be mindful of the fact that the request to review the legal framework in which this court works is still there, and this request is not going to disappear. The understanding of a lot of countries is that a head of state should not be prosecuted while he is carrying out his tasks. So this is where we stand right now. What does all that mean? Is there a place for the ICC in the future? Yes, there is. But of course the court has to be mindful of the fact that the political support and the support of states parties is not limitless. It was said very clearly to the court last year through the assembly meeting and through all these discussions that we had, and that also happened in the UN Security Council. And the best way for this court right now to render service to states parties is clearly responding to the requests of states parties to get involved. Whether that fully covers the goal that was there and the idea that was there in Rome and that is written in Rome Statute, I do not know. But this is where we stand right now. The very promising fact is that there is this request, there is this yearning for justice. And maybe just to finish, I tell you one of the things that we did, my office and the court, I was explained that nowadays a lot of things get done through social media. So we launched a social media campaign for the Day of International Criminal Justice. Everybody was asked to take pictures with a sign to celebrate it. Doesn't cost anything, and you get people from all over the world to do it. And a lot of people participated in it, and they did not see any problems in having their photos posted. And then when all of that finished, then we started getting requests from people who said, "Can you please take off my photo because I got in trouble?" I hope that we are able to continue building the court, able to continue supporting international criminal justice and international justice in general. And I wish you all the best in your discussions over the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. We'll move into our break now. And before we move into our break, I would just like to make a few important announcements. First of all, probably the most important announcement, restrooms are located in the building right next door. So when you go out, you'll see the building just off to your right. That's where the restrooms are located. So please head in that direction. For those of you who are not staying in the hotel and want to join us for any of the meals that are taking place at noon today, this evening's meal, breakfast tomorrow morning, and noon tomorrow, where we have wonderful guest speakers at each of these meals. You do need to buy a ticket to join us for those meals at the hotel desk and pay for your meal in advance so that the hotel can plan